Hi, welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 120.
I'm Cam and this is Julie. This week's Torah portion, we are looking at Genesis 25:19 to 28:9. My voice is still a little raspy.
Allergies.
Whatever, I'm feeling great. So we're going to just go on with this discussion and hopefully you don't need me to interpret it. So if you look at our last year and the year before that, we have some great discussion on this week's Torah portion, as well as the prophets and the Brit Hadashah.
Right.
We encourage you to please go take a look at them and pick up a few nuggets. I know we still do when we listen to them. So let's look at a few things this year that we haven't necessarily covered before.
Good luck.
One thing that I noticed, and actually someone said it, I don't remember who, it could have been a list of people, but it was just this little statement, and it was that when we see it listed as, and this is the genealogy,
Right. That's
generations, and this is the generations, and then it starts to go into a story, the reason why is because it points to the legacy, the one in the family who's keeping the legacy, the story. I love that, because then I start to go, oh, all right, well, that makes perfect sense, because we do see where, like example, last week in 12, it says this is the genealogy of Ishmael, and then it just names all the sons, because there's not one who kept the story of Ishmael that's pertinent to the scripture, that's pertinent to our story. But when we go down to the beginning of this week, which is verse 19, and this is the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Now it goes straight into when he was 40 years old, he took a wife. And it tells the story of how these two children are born. And then, of course, we have this weird one, chapter 26, that's kind of in the middle of this story. So his genealogy, here's Isaac and Esau, all right? And then it goes and jumps into 26 about, and the whales. This tells the story. So as I really looked at it, I started thinking, so why is there this kind of interlude, this story that's significant? Because it's really all we hear about Isaac, if you think about it. We have the Akedah,
right?
And then we have this event with the whales.
Right.
Whales. What the deal is with whales and whales?
It's not whales.
No. And they can't even fit in a whale. That's all I'm saying.
And they're not coming out of a well.
No, it's a whole nother religion. But anyway, so you have this well, and the digging of the well and the making of or renewing this covenant with Abimelech. So one of the things that I saw this week having to do with the legacy part, I wanted to look at, and that is the whole event of verse 26, chapter 26, where we have Abimelech and his lead guard, commander of his army, and they're coming and they're wanting to renew this covenant. It says, let us make this oath, all right? And if we look in 27, it says, and Isaac said to them, why have you come to me, seeing that you hated me and have sent me away from you? So I thought hated. So, we know one aspect of hated is to be not preferred. Another is actually you hate, all right? That is a function of that word. But right here, he's like, you hated me. You didn't want to be in covenant, knowing that back in Genesis 21, there was a covenant made. Now, my thought process was, is this the same Abimelech? We know that it is a king's title, like Pharaoh. So I looked at the word hated and thought, I'm going to look it up. Where is that? It is in Genesis 24. Here's why I think it's very significant. In Genesis 24:60, it's the blessing that Laban and his family are saying over Rebekah. And it says, and they blessed Rebekah and said to her, let our sister become the mother of thousands, of 10,000s, and let your seed possess the gates of those who hate them.
Oh.
So there's the blessing, that those who are in opposition, who hate you, you're going to possess their gates.
Wow. So
I thought not only the fact that Abimelech already had this covenant with Abraham, if this, and I'm assuming it is another Abimelech, okay, but still those people would still be in covenant, it has to be that he's going to go into it with the seed, with the son of Rebekah, because that blessing said that her kids are going to rule or going to possess the gate. So I thought, oh my gosh, how awesome is this? We're seeing this very country's not the word I want to say, but group, tribe, land, Philistines who are like, something tells me I need to follow through and get right with this guy.
Right.
Anyway, I just think it's neat because
that is cool.
It has to go beyond Abraham, even with his children, because of that extra blessing.
Right.
Just a thought. Another thing about chapter 26 that I've heard twice now, and it's talking about, well, we don't really know when this happened. We don't really know when they went, traveled away from Beersheba and went to Gerar. We don't really know when the famine happened. And two people that I heard speaking both said, oh, well, this actually happened before the boys were born.
Yeah, right.
But if you just read the scripture itself, that is solved. That mystery is solved. It can't be. Because we see in 25:11, it says, and it came to be after the death of Abraham that Elohim blessed his son Isaac. Okay. The Lord doesn't even bless Isaac until
after Abraham's death.
He's dead. Now, when we go back and read in 26, the whole problem with the wells in verse 18 is, and Isaac dug again the wells of his father, which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham.
Yeah,
that right there solves the mystery.
Yeah.
Well, this has to be after the death of Abraham.
Right.
And from the midrash, and I do lean heavily towards this, that Abraham died when the boys were 15, hence the porridge event.
Okay.
So that, again, shows. Now, let's say we've got the kids at 15 at the end of 25, and then at the end of 26, we've got them at 40 years old. Okay. That's a lot of years in between. So it's very... it makes a lot of sense that after the boys have gone through the mourning, they've grown up some, that mom and dad and their group, because remember, they were, small little tribe, they left. Right. But that tribe didn't grow into something huge until they're here. Let's see what it says. It says in verse 13, and the man grew great and went forward until he became very great. Now, think about this. If we've got the whole event with the porridge.
Right.
And he's like, oh, now Abraham's died, okay? And Esau's like, what does it matter? I'm going to die, right? I'm going to die of hunger. But I started thinking, Jacob sees further. Abraham's died. Who's that blessing going to? It's going to their dad.
Right.
We see that in verse 4 of 26. It's now finally going to their father. So Jacob is 15 and he's not thinking, I'm going to get it. He's thinking, Dad's going to get it, and then I hope to get it.
Right.
But when Abraham died, while Abraham was wealthy, but already had given so much to his other kids, really, what did they inherit? We don't know. Right. But it wasn't the blessing. It hadn't been seen to come to fruition yet. So the short-sightedness of Esau, what does it matter? I'm going to die too. Abraham died and it hadn't happened. I could die and it hadn't happened.
Right.
So it could have a lot more to do than just the immediate. It could have even the thought of, I won't see it come to fruition, so who cares?
Right.
I only want what I can benefit from.
Right.
So now his parents leave, right? He grows wealthy. The next thing we have in 27, bless me.
Yeah.
Now we've got goods to be blessed with. He sure does want it. And I wonder if his dad had not come to that point of being so wealthy,
right? Had
he fought so hard to get that blessing. Because he didn't care about the birthright.
Right.
But now Dad's got some stuff.
And I noticed after he shows that he didn't care about the birthright, he immediately goes and marries women of the land.
Right.
So, the blessing is the hope of what's to come.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So really showed his heart, because I don't want that. That's too far in the future, but I want this. It's right in my face, and it's the immediate gratification.
Right.
And so many people, that's the thing with the Lord. They want the blessings, but they don't understand what's the other side of that coin.
Right. And the very fact grabbing a hold of the immediate disqualified from the long term.
Right. Right.
That's kind of scary.
It is. Hi, surprise. We had to move because we are running from the sun.
Yes.
The sun is quickly setting, and we're having to play musical chairs.
Nothing like last minute, right? All
Right.
right. So another thing I thought was hilarious, because last week on Facebook, I posted a little Torah treat.
Right.
Or Torah thought. I'm not sure which one it was. I think it's Torah thought. And it was talking about how in 24 of Genesis, how the servant was sent to Mesopotamia. And where was it? Was it the north or was it over
Right.
on the east side? Because we know that from Ur Chaldean is where they originally came. And then
Right.
they went up to Haran. So after some research, and I threw out some scriptures, and Acts 7:2 was the big because it says he went to this place. It was the place that was named, I can't pronounce it, before he was called to go to Haran. So I was like, oh my
Right.
gosh, so he did go over there. But this week we have in 28:2, it says, arise and go to
Padan Haram.
the house of Bethel, your mother's father, and take a wife for yourself there from the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. So my thought is, well, now we're in Haran. But when we go in last week's Torah portion, it wasn't. It was a different area. And so now my thought was, my first thought was, golly, that's wrong. So it was always the north. And then all of a sudden it struck me, who says they didn't move?
Yeah.
No idea. Okay. It doesn't probably matter, but I still find it really interesting. Here's why. Isaac's wife would have had this, if this is correct, that they went to the east side, which I do believe it is, from these scriptures that we talked about right here. I do believe that he went to where they originally came from, where Nahor did not leave from. We know that from
Right.
Genesis 11.
Right.
He didn't leave with them.
Right.
So he goes there, the servant goes there, gets her, and brings her back, which has her coming from the east to meet Isaac. Yet now going to get Jacob as in the flesh part, he goes north.
Yeah.
And he gets the wife from the north so here's all the people. Now the family part moved. It's a smaller part of Abraham's people that she's coming from. It's still the same family, but where the bride's being drawn out of is a smaller pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, that makes perfect sense. For Isaac, right, Messiah coming for the world, he
Right.
pulls out of the larger pot.
Well,
more variety.
He comes. His death, burial, and resurrection requires us to be set apart.
Yes.
And then from the set apart, right?
Right.
Then the bride will come from there.
Yes.
So that's kind of this
Right.
pattern.
And so you have the bigger and then the small. Yes. Anyway, hey, who's to say that they didn't move? I mean, you've got Rebecca who's now there. And they're like, well, we don't really want to go to Canaan because there's no land. There's nothing for us there. But let's go hook up with the rest of our family. I
Right.
could actually see it happening. Not saying it did. Just interesting thought.
Who knows?
Who knows? Anyway, last two quick things that kind of went ding. And one, you're going to laugh when I say it.
Okay.
I don't know why, but never did I think about this. Esau was circumcised.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, of course we know that.
Right.
But for some reason, I never thought about that.
Right.
The reason why I bring it up is because we have Ishmael and Jacob. Ishmael and Isaac, who are both circumcised, and we have that example very much so in Galatians, right?
Right.
But we
right.
don't ever hear about Esau being
circumcised.
Okay. So you put Jacob as the wheat and Esau as the tares.
Right.
All right, they're together.
They're both circumcised.
Right.
They're both
They're
set
both
apart.
circumcised. Yes, from the rest of the world. But how do you behave once you're set apart?
Right. Right.
Jacob behaved in accordance to what he learned from on the spiritual side.
Yes.
Esau learned according to what he learned from the flesh side.
And he was willing to be long-suffering, waiting on the blessing.
And not caring if he didn't get it right away.
Right.
He trusted the Lord enough to know, even if I die and I don't see it yet, that's okay.
Yeah.
I know that this is all about a legacy. He
Right.
got the bigger picture. Y'all, we are awful about that.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times do we do things and we're like, well, what benefit was that? Though we know that even for Isaac in chapter 26 and 5, it says, because Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charges and commands, my laws, and my Torah. It's because Abraham did that Isaac even got to take on the blessing.
Right.
And because Isaac teaches that to the kids, he gets to.
Right.
So, again,
and because
what
Jacob
we do,
pursued it.
Yes.
That's what really got me. Jacob, he doesn't just get it because he actually isn't the one that's supposed to get it. He gets it because he pursued it.
Yeah, well, he is supposed to. I mean, because
in
the womb he knows.
Right,
but you're right. According to the world's order, he should have never gotten it.
Right.
But according to the Lord's, knowing them in the womb, he was absolutely, because remember, he doesn't tell Rebecca until in the end of 25 that the two nations, right? Mm-hmm. And that the younger would serve, the older would serve the younger. So once they're in the womb, he knows them in the womb. He knew us in the womb.
Yeah. So in the womb, when she's having this wrestling going on, were they wrestling to get out first?
Well, that's the midrash, yeah.
Right?
That's the whole thing. They're fighting for who is going to get the birthright.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I see it like just let him go out.
Well,
it's
it's kind of interesting because Esau won that. He got it, but yet he squandered it. He didn't respect it. He didn't pursue it. He didn't want it.
Right. And he gets to have the upper hand. He does have the upper hand for a long time. Remember, we've talked about this before. When Esau's reigning, Jacob's down. When Jacob is, Esau's down. They can't be equal, and they can't, one's up and one's down. And you know this from the blessing. Even the blessing that Jacob gives them, that Isaac gives them in 27, he says clearly to Esau that Esau is going to live away from the dew of the land, away from the land.
Right.
Not in the land. And not with it. It's away. They weren't given the same thing. They were given the complete opposite. Mm-hmm. But the only thing that Isaac added to it for him was like, hey, if your brother doesn't behave, you get to rule. Well, I'm sorry, but isn't that a godly principle? Right. Doesn't he say to Israel?
Yes. Be the head or the tail.
Right. If you behave, and I say behave, behave. Do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Walk as in accordance to how he has set us to reflect who he is. Mm-hmm. It works out the way it's supposed to.
Yes, and the blessings and the prospering and all of that is built into the system.
Right. Yes, as we said before.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's built into the system. It's not like, okay, I'm gonna check off these things so I can then prosper. No.
Right.
By doing these things, you automatically prosper. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. It goes back to this, when we learned this years ago, but the Hebraic versus the Greek mindset. The Hebraic mindset says, I love you so much, Lord, that I want to do this. It doesn't matter what I get. The Greek says, I don't want to go to hell, so I'm going to do this.
Right.
And I love you because I'm not having to go to hell.
Yeah.
But hell seems to be the concentration of the goal.
The Greek.
Right, the Greek mindset. And the Hebrew, the Lord is the concentration of it. Right. I just want you. That's it. If there's no benefit, that's okay. My life here, serving with you, will suffice for anything else. That is greater than anything else.
Right.
Wow, what a thought.
Don't you see that in the blessing with Esau? He didn't say, look, you're just going to be poor and a nomad. He said, you will be prosperous, but you have to be outside of the land.
Right.
Same thing with those people who, I just don't want to go to hell, but I love you. And,
you're
still fine. You can be prosperous, but you're not going to inherit the land.
Right. And thank you, Jude. We know that they're still, saved by fear from the fire. That's fine.
Right.
Absolutely. It's the end. It's just once you get in, where do you get to go in the house?
And trust me, on that day, it'll be like $1 million.
Oh, yeah. Way better.
Being saved from the fire, yeah.
The last note is really quick, and it just had to do with really looking at how Isaac was digging the wells. Uh-huh. That was the legacy. He wasn't trying to dig a well for himself. He was pulling back up his father's.
Right.
Where the living water was coming from, what was nourishing those who were around, okay? Mm-hmm. That's what his goal was to bring up to raise his father's provisions back up.
Right.
And never in his name, but still in his name of Abraham.
Yeah. Just like
Abraham's
Yeshua.
wells. Right, exactly.
Just like Yeshua when he came. Mm-hmm. And just like us now.
Right.
Trying
we need to Jeremiah 6:16, turn back to the ancient paths. That's right.
All right, well, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. And we can't wait to see you next time. And we hope you have a fantastic week. Shalom.